Hey everyone, today I'll be comparing two fairly recent Moyu 3i3s, the Weilong YS3M and the Weilong WRM V9, specifically the ball core and UV coated versions of both. Before you ask, hey, what is this clock guy doing talking about 3i3? Well, I know a thing or two about 3i3, I think. Anyways, these both arrived alongside my first package from Sweetgift Shop while being on the team, so huge thanks to them for providing me with both these cubes along with a few other products you'll see in this review. I'll start by covering the basic details of both. The YS3M is a cube designed with a lot of input from former 3i3 world record holder Yu Shengdu. The specific version I have happens to be the most premium with a price of $37 US. It has a standard size of 55mm and weighs about 84 grams. The Weilong V9 is Moyu's flagship release for this year, with this specific version being a lot pricier than the YS3 at $65 US. It also has a standard size of 55mm but is a touch lighter than the YS3 at about 76 grams. Immediately with these prices, I was expecting the V9 to feel like a high quality cube with a more refined performance. I also assumed that the YS3 could also perform pretty nicely, but I still had my expectations higher for the V9. With this in mind, I wanted to unbox and try the YS3 before the V9. Here are my first impressions. Yu Shengdu is not the world record holder anymore. Got an accessories box as usual. Alright, let's get to the cube. Ooh, yes. Instantly I noticed the UV coating. It's really grippy. And you can see that on the camera as well. It's really shiny. Alright, first hands. Yeah, really. It's like, it has a snappy feeling. But it's also like naturally pretty. It has a really good speed, like naturally. Like these pens are not taking much effort, which is always nice. Obviously I feel like I would need to set this up for it to be a really good main contender, but so far I'm liking this. It's a bit annoying solving behind the camera, but one thing I noticed is that like I had to like think about how I turned, like, to be a bit more cautious as to not like overshoot anything like that. But yeah, I actually like this. I think this would be a good main contender. This is my current main, the Tornado V3. If the V9 doesn't blow this completely out of the water, then I think this might do a good job. This is also similar with the accessories box. Already got that, we'll put that aside and get to the cube. Ooh, yep. The UV coating is also evident in this one. I'm not sure if I noticed it like more. Could just be in my head, but I'm not sure. This feels pretty similar, but also like, I'm not sure how to describe it, but like, oh, one thing I'm noticing instantly is the magnets really strong. Like it's not letting me get the cube to 45. Wow, okay. Yeah, so they went for like close to the approach that GAN did with the 12, I believe. But yeah, overall I actually really like how it looks as well. Like the internals, the light blue internals look really nice along with like the shape of the cube. I don't know, something about this is like sort of aesthetically pleasing to me. I used to be like not too much of a fan of UV coating, but like on these Moyu cubes in particular, like something about them just looks nice. I'm gonna
Just my phone. And yeah, this one's also really speedy naturally, which I also really like, and it's complemented by the strong magnets. Sort of like the GTS3 was, but to a higher extent, I feel. This feels like a mix of the WRM 2020 and a GAN cube. Like, this feel pretty much reminds me of the 2020, which was a cube like I mained for quite a bit and really loved. To be honest, I'm pretty torn on which one I'm enjoying more right now, based on my first impressions. Like, this one feels a lot more stable and more cohesive. Like, I can see why they're named the way they are, because this one really reminds me of the Weilong 2020, the WRM 2020. I'm gonna do a solve on this later to see like how it actually does, how it actually performs in a solve for me. But this one also like reminds me of the YS3M in a way. Like, apart from the fact that the names are similar. And yeah, I'm overall impressed. I'll set these up and let's see how they do.
As you can see, I was more than satisfied with both cubes, and definitely knew that either of them had a shot at being my new main. I was more impressed with the YS3M however, not because I knew that I liked it more, but because it had a performance and feeling of a very high quality puzzle that was only a bit over half the price of my other option. The V9 also blew me away initially. Out of the box it was extremely speedy, but that speed was close to being complemented well by the pretty strong magnets and auto alignment system. I still definitely had to slow it down a little bit, just to not feel like the cube was going to do any U3s from a small flick. As for the YS3, it felt a tad dry, so I wanted to gum it up a little bit for a nicer feeling without losing the natural speed that I really liked. Another thing to note is that both cubes by default come on the weaker spring compression setting, which would make sense considering the sheer speed both cubes have out of the box. To set the YS3 up, I used SpeakerShop Nebula on the tracks to add a substantive gummy feel and use Martian on the outer parts of the piece to keep the speed, while also adding a good amount of smoothness to the turning. I also moved the spring compression up slightly to its third lowest setting, as I didn't want the cube to lose much speed, and it also felt like it was very stable for the speed it had. For the V9, I only used SpeakerShop Galaxy to lube the pieces, as again, I wanted to bring the cube to a slightly slower and smoother state, and Galaxy seemed to bring a really good balance for this cube in particular. In addition, I brought the spring compression up to the middle setting, the fifth one out of the 9 settings, in order to make the puzzle a lot more controllable while speed solving. And to my surprise, after both of these changes, the cube was still a lot more speedy than the Tornado V3, my previous main. But not in a bad way at all. The turning was more manageable and overturning felt far less likely to happen, partially thanks to the magnet strength, but this also helped the turning feel very effortless. After these setups, I knew I had 2 great 303s to try out. Both were really nice and I enjoyed turning and solving them for different reasons. The YS3 had a solid and cohesive feel comparable to the RS3 2020, but also a nice natural speed that is nowhere near being sluggish, while also remaining very controllable. On the other hand, the V9 had a lot more effortlessness in its turning, which was complemented very nicely by its auto alignment system demonstrated earlier, and also had a relatively smooth feeling, but also a crispy quality to its turning. Something I can't really describe effectively here, but could be understandable by comparing the sounds of the cubes. Now that I was happy with the both of them, I had to use them enough to decide on which one I liked more and would main, since I knew that either of one were going to replace the Tornado V3. When practicing with the YS3, I had a really enjoyable solving experience, and was putting down some really nice averages. The incredible balanced feeling of this cube after setup is definitely not something that should be overlooked, as I rarely found it difficult to make mistakes when trying to turn at a high speed. However, I'm not sure if this is a result of being so used to the tornado, but I did end up feeling like there was a bit more resistance in the cube when I slightly undershot turns during last layer. This isn't to say that the cube doesn't corner cut well, because it definitely does. It's the feedback that I got from corner cuts that felt slightly different from what I was used to. It's not an inherently positive or negative thing, just something I noticed when doing solves. The V9, however, is quite a different story, and definitely not in a bad way. Only just a few solves in with it, I set a new 3x3 PB single of 5.09. I found this crazy considering how rare it is for me to get a sub 6 single, and I break my PB on a cube that I haven't fully adjusted to yet. Naturally, this motivated me a lot to keep solving on this cube, and that 509 single was just a sign of what was to come. Later that same day, I got my very first sub 7 average of 5 with the Weilong V9, an average of 6.85. Quite literally 3 solves later, that average was rolled down to 6.78. Over the next few days, I tried more practice with both the cubes to see if my PBs on that day were just a result of purely being in the zone. But every practice session with the V9 seemed to have me average marginally faster than what I normally averaged. On top of that, more PB averages on the V9 kept on coming. I dropped the AO5 down to 671, then to an insane 6.59. My solves and turning were beginning to feel very fluid, and the cube allowed me to effortlessly spam TPS during last layer. Needless to say, as much as I wanted to give the YS3M a fair shot, I just couldn't seem to put down the same results, though I still managed to get some really great times and still averaged better than my previous global on it. But with all that said, I couldn't believe what was to happen on the 7th of July. I got my first sub 5 single on the Weilong V9, a time of 4.07. over a second faster than my previous PB. Though the solve itself was obviously quite lucky, having a 6-move OLL into a PLL skip, I knew after this that I had decided on the V9 being my new main 3x3. Since then, I've broken my AO5 PB once more, which now stands at 6.55, consisting of another sub 5 single, which was full step, having an insane TPS of 10.9. It can be concluded quite easily that these new cubes and PBs have skyrocketed my motivation to practice 3x3 and finally achieved my long overdue goal of getting a sub 9 official average, which I've fumbled many times, and hopefully a sub 8 average not long after that. I hope to work on things such as my look ahead and inspection to further take advantage of my turning speed and fluidity that the V9 allowed me to have. As for which cube of the two I'd recommend, I certainly think that both are exceptional for different reasons. But as much as I love the V9 and think that it's a cube that fits my solving very nicely, along with making solving very enjoyable for me, its out-of-the-box unstableness and crunchy feeling may not be something that everyone would prefer, and is certainly the cube which requires more setup to be usable for speed solving. The YS3M is nearly half the price of the V9 and would definitely be my new main if I hadn't also gotten the V9 at the same time. Its incredible quality and cohesiveness as a puzzle is definitely something which more people would enjoy. And if the V9 doesn't seem like the right cube for you after what I've described, then I'm almost fully positive you would love the YS3M. If you're thinking about buying either of those cubes along with the Cosmic Series lubricants that I used, you can buy them at speakyshop.com using code BlueJacket for 5% off your order. Thank you for watching, hope you found this useful, and see you later.